My pleasure to introduce AGA's President and CEO, Bill Miller.
Thanks, Casey. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to this event every year. It provides us an opportunity to reflect on all that we've achieved together and focus on building an even stronger future. I just got back from the Super Bowl. What an incredible experience. The Super Bowl is one of the world's top sporting events, and Super Bowl 57 was the first to be held in a legal sports betting state at a stadium with a sports book. And that is no small achievement. It's further evidence of our industry's mainstream success. And next year, we'll have even more to celebrate when Las Vegas hosts the Super Bowl for the first time. Today, we're going to spend some time this morning talking about the strength of our industry today and the opportunities and challenges ahead of us. A year ago, we celebrated an incredible resurgence coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our industry's comeback was fueled by pent-up demand that set a high bar for 2022. And frankly, some folks thought we couldn't replicate those 2021 results. We didn't. We exceeded them. 2022 was a phenomenal year. Commercial and tribal gaming revenue is likely to exceed $100 billion for the full year of 2022 when the tribal numbers are reported later this year. What's more impressive is we did this while international visitation, business travel, and conventions were still recovering. So how do we achieve this success? First, we offer an exciting experience that people want. Consumer demand for gaming has proven resilient. And then second, we've expanded our demographic appeal coming out of the pandemic. Younger customers are increasingly making in-person and online gaming one of their first choice entertainment options. I've asked AGA's Vice President of Research, Dave Foreman, to give you a deeper look at our 2022 performance. He'll share what we've seen in our commercial gaming revenue tracker for the full calendar year. Dave?
Thanks, Bill. As you mentioned, 2022 was the highest revenue year ever for the commercial U.S. Gaming sector. At the end of last year, there were 469 brick and mortar commercial casinos across 27 states, including 2 new markets in Virginia and Nebraska. That's 4 more casino properties than we had at the end of 2019. So the long-term impact of the pandemic on the footprint of physical casinos across the country was quite limited. Beyond the brick and mortar casinos, 6 states offer the full availability of iGaming, and finally 26 states, plus Washington, D.C., offered commercial sports betting last year. As Bill said, together those verticals generated $60.4 billion in gaming revenue, breaking the record set just last year, or in 2021, by nearly 14%. That growth is almost the equivalent of adding another Las Vegas Strip to the U.S. gaming market. And again, as Bill said, while those numbers just cover commercial gaming, tribal gaming also appears to have expanded last year. Nationwide 2022 figures for the tribal gaming revenue won't be available for several months, but revenue sharing data from Oklahoma shows that traditional gaming at tribal properties grew about 6% there, in line with what we saw with commercial revenue growth in traditional casino floor games. So taken together, as Bill alluded to, the entire U.S. gaming industry likely generated more than $100 billion in gaming revenue last year, putting gaming about in line with beer sales when it comes to overall consumer spending. Looking across the commercial verticals, brick and mortar casinos generated nearly $48 billion in revenue, while sports betting brought in $7.5 billion and iGaming just over $5 billion. Taking a closer look now at traditional brick and mortar revenue, slot revenue totaled $34.2 billion in 2022, up 5.1% from 2021. Table games generated $10 billion, up 14% from the previous year. Both are new annual records. It was notable that we saw a reversal in the dynamic from 2021. Right? That year, slots recovered a lot faster than table games as properties reopened, but some were still impacted by distancing rules. In 2022, again, that reversed with table revenue really recovering like slots did the previous year as everything kind of came back to normal last year. At the state level, traditional gaming revenue, again meaning slots and table games, increased over 2021 in all but 4 states. Kansas and Michigan saw traditional gaming revenue decline slightly by less than a percentage point, while Mississippi revenue fell 3.6%, and South Dakota was down 2.6%. Both of those states had reopened and eliminated pandemic restrictions earlier than others in 2021, so they faced tougher comparisons than others last year. Market-wise, Las Vegas Strip remains far and away the largest commercial gaming revenue market in the country, and Atlantic City comfortably retained its spot at number 2. Washington, D.C. and Chicago areas continued their back and forth for the third largest market, with D.C. taking back that position last year. Turning to sports betting, we're still waiting for Arizona's December numbers, but excluding those, Americans collectively bet $93.2 billion on sports with legal commercial sports books in 2022, driving gaming revenue of $7.5 billion. That's up 73% from 2021, thanks to the launch of legal betting in Kansas and the addition of mobile betting in Louisiana, Maryland, and New York. Sports betting revenue was also helped by a hold percentage that has steadily increased from 6.9% in 2019 to 7.5% in 2021, and it reached nearly 8.1% last year. At the state level, in its first year with mobile betting, New York quickly became the largest market in the country, generating $1.4 billion in revenue, followed by Illinois, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, rounding out the top 5 states in terms of sports betting revenue. Finally, iGaming is fully available in 6 states, not counting Nevada, which only offers online poker and does not break out that revenue. And in 2022, iGaming revenue totaled just over $5 billion, up 35% from 2021. Notably, iGaming revenue grew by more than a third despite no new states launching last year. Each of those 6 iGaming markets set new revenue records in 2022, but the vast majority of that revenue came from just 3 states. New Jersey, Michigan, and Pennsylvania combined to account for $4.6 billion in iGaming revenue, more than 90% of the nationwide total. In terms of market size at the state level, New Jersey remained the largest iGaming market, followed by Michigan and Pennsylvania. So taken together, the online sports betting and iGaming verticals comprised just under 20% of all commercial gaming revenue last year, a record share of what is a growing overall revenue pie. That's up from 15% in 2021, and it was just 3.3% of all gaming revenue in 2019 that came from online and digital sources. So a really dramatic increase in just the last 3 or 4 years. When we talk about that share of online revenue, it is important to remember here that we're just talking about commercial gaming. Tribal gaming revenue, though it hasn't been released yet, could represent another $41 billion plus dollars in largely traditional gaming, which would put the real share of online sports betting and iGaming revenue at maybe around 12% of all gaming revenue across the country when you include that tribal component. So now shifting gears and looking forward just a bit in terms of where we're going to go this year, we're off to a strong start already, although the comparisons are easier right now for the first few months of the year due to COVID concerns last winter. Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, Maryland, Massachusetts, and others have already reported January 2023 revenue numbers that are well ahead of last year. And beyond revenue numbers, casinos have changed their demographic mix over the past few years. 84 million Americans, or 34% of adults in America, visited a casino last year. And last month, more people said they plan to visit a casino over the next 12 months than at any time since before the pandemic. Those visitors continue to trend younger. Last year, the average age of a casino visitor fell to 42 years old. That's down from nearly 50 years old in 2019. The average casino visitor, as you can see, is now almost 7 years younger than the average American adult. And consumers' reasons for visiting a casino have also shifted since the pandemic. 68% of casino visitors last year said that they were there to gamble, compared to just 42% in 2019. So casino visitors are younger, their spending is up as they recognize the entertainment value the industry provides. 85% of casino visitors last year said that casinos represented an excellent or good entertainment value compared to alternative options. and it's clear that they're choosing to spend their entertainment budgets, an increasing share of their entertainment budgets, on gaming. So with some of those trends in mind, we're excited to see how the rest of 2023 unfolds. And with that, I'll turn it back to Bill to put all this in context and discuss what it means for the industry and the AGA in 2023.
All right. Thanks, Dave. As we've just heard, the fundamentals of our industry are strong, and we've never been more united. On behalf of the AGA, I want to thank you for the trust you've placed in us to lead gaming forward. We all know we're going to have some challenges ahead of us, but as long as we're in it together, I'm absolutely confident we'll come out on top. And look, as you just heard, we start 2023 with some serious momentum. The AGA has earned a seat at the table across federal and state governments and regulators. And we're going to use that strong position to advocate for industry priorities. At the state level, that means effective relationships with regulators and policymakers that support gaming, and those are vital to achieving our priorities. The AGA will continue to build trusted relationships, serve as a reliable resource for insight, and share our deep industry knowledge of the type Dave just described. We will educate state lawmakers and regulators on gaming's value to the communities, the protections of the legal market, and the importance of flexible regulation in a thriving gaming industry. And at the federal level, we'll encourage investment through sound tax policy. We'll drive modernization of anti-money laundering regulations. We'll work to increase international travel to the U.S. and combat the illegal market. And I'll have a lot more to say about that in just a minute. As you all know, after the elections, the Democrats control the Senate, and the GOP now has a slim majority in the House of Representatives, where the Congressional Gaming Caucus was just relaunched this week. I want to express my appreciation for caucus co-chairs Dina Titus, our voice from Las Vegas, and Guy Reschenthaler, who is now a member of the House GOP leadership. In these political times, true bipartisan efforts, they should be celebrated. Through the caucus, we bring together legislators from both parties and identify areas of common interest. It's hard to overstate how important this is. In a divided Congress, legislative wins will be hard to come by. The Gaming Caucus is our conduit to identifying and pursuing pathways to success. Beyond that, we're getting creative, pursuing our priorities across the whole federal government. We're looking at regulatory pathways to raise the slot tax threshold and eliminate the sports betting excise tax. Now, we're not pursuing these priorities in a vacuum. We certainly have some concerns about the economy, but we still remain optimistic. Travel and tourism has continued to recover from the pandemic. Hotel occupancy in 2022 was just 5% below pre-pandemic levels, and domestic air travel is expected to return to 2019 levels this year. The U.S. economy remains strong, and many of our CEOs have a positive view on what's around the corner, expressing optimism in recent earnings calls. That said, we're certainly keeping our eye on inflation, employment, and interest rates, which not only impact consumer behavior, but also raise costs to our businesses and tighten access to capital. Amidst all of this in the U.S., the global economy is also in flux. With restrictions lifted, Macau appears to be moving in the right direction, but it's still too early to know how or when China's changes in COVID policy will influence the global gaming industry. We know it will, but it remains a wild card. Regardless of the macroeconomic conditions, the AGA remains laser focused on the priorities that will have the most meaningful impact to our industry. That means taking on the illegal market, doubling down on responsibility, and creating conditions for our industry to thrive. First, we're continuing that war against the illegal and unregulated gambling world. As I said earlier, we're using every tool at our disposal to go after illegal businesses. We won't see these results overnight, but we're in this one for the long haul. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but the illegal market is the single biggest threat our industry faces. Last year, we took an important step to paint a real target on the size and scale of the illegal market. Americans bet more than $500 billion with illegal offshore sports books, casinos, bookies, and unregulated machines. This comes at a cost of $44 billion to the legal regulated businesses and deprives communities of more than $13 billion in tax revenue. With nearly half of the gambling in the U.S. happening illegally, it presents a significant threat to the progress the regulated industry makes on responsible gaming and problem gambling, age verification, AML compliance, and more. We know that Americans overwhelmingly want to play with legal regulated operators, but unregulated and illegal businesses are taking advantage of our growth and millions of consumers who are new to gaming. They're brazenly ignoring the law, exploiting consumer confusion by trying to present themselves as legitimate operators. Whether it's so-called skill-based machines, offshore operators, or sports books posing as fantasy sites, we're just not going to stand for it. And the AGA is chipping away at their market share by working with Congress to ensure law enforcement prioritizes investigations and prosecutions, engaging state AGs and the U.S. attorneys on how these bad actors flout the law. We're weighing in with state legislatures to strengthen laws and close loopholes. And we're working with private sector stakeholders to shut off platforms for illegal gambling operations. We certainly can't do this alone. We will get stronger results as a unified industry, and we look forward to working and partnering with you to help shut down the illegal market. One thing we know for certain, our industry will attract and continue to attract more attention as we continue to grow. This makes it more important than ever that we double down on our commitment to responsibility. We're proud to join with our members for National Human Trafficking Prevention Month in January, raising the awareness and empowering employees with new tools and resources. The AGA will continue to find opportunities to bring members, policymakers, law enforcement, and nonprofits together to combat human trafficking. Our industry also has a strong track record on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we look forward to building on that in 2023. To start, we need to know what diversity looks like in gaming today, which is why the AGA conducted a foundational study. The results show that not only are we significantly more diverse industry than a decade ago, but that our workers are more racially diverse than the U.S. workforce as a whole. We expect to release the results of this study this spring and use them to strengthen our commitments to DEI in gaming. Responsible gaming remains foundational to our industry. It is a fact there has never been more attention paid nor money invested in responsible gaming or problem gambling than there is today. But as an industry evolves, so must our commitments to responsibility. The AGA is leading an industry-wide effort to evolve responsible gaming for today's modern era. We plan to convene advocates, researchers, regulators, and industry leaders to explore a wide range of questions, including what opportunities and challenges does gaming face in the digital era? How can technology put more responsible gaming tools in the hands of customers? How can we deepen collaboration with stakeholders to advance a more sustainable marketplace? Doing this successfully will require engagement across the entire industry. We look forward to conversations with our members, with stakeholders and advocates to help define the future of responsibility. We're in a transformational era in gaming, experience a period of growth that is unmatched in our industry's history. Today, sports betting is legal in 36 states, plus the District of Columbia. To start the year, Ohio and Massachusetts have launched new legal markets, and more than half of all American adults can now legally bet in their home state. 8 states now have active legislation. 3 states are considering expansion, and we expect more to take up the issue as the legislative sessions continue. By the end of 2023, we could reasonably see as many as 40 legal sports betting markets. Truly remarkable to think of since the Supreme Court's ruling on PASPA just 5 years ago. We will continue to focus on building a responsible legal market to get this opportunity right, because we know the creation of a legal sports betting market isn't only changing the face of gaming, it's also transforming sports and entertainment. After sports betting, iGaming is the fastest growing vertical. While progress on legalization has been slower, iGaming is complementing brick and mortar in the states with legal markets. 5 states have already introduced bills, and we expect more to come. The AGA is ready to assist policymakers to ensure any new market prioritizes responsible play, safeguards customers, and prevents criminal activity. Finally, traditional brick and mortar casinos continue to show tremendous growth. There are new developments in Arkansas, Illinois, Nebraska, Virginia, and on the horizon in New York. Our industry is firing on all cylinders. And when we look at what the future holds, it looks as promising as ever. The state of our industry is strong. We've come off our best year ever. We're collaborating more as an industry, and we're leading with confidence, and we're looking at the future with optimism. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. And now I'd like to open up the conversation for your questions.
Thank you, Bill. As he mentioned, we'll now answer some questions with our remaining time. We've got a handful of minutes left here. As a reminder, there is a separate Q&A for members of the press immediately following this event, so we kindly ask that the media hold their questions for that session. Dave Foreman, our head of research, is also here to answer questions that you might have about the data that he shared this afternoon. So with that, Bill, let's jump into a couple questions that come in. You discussed both upcoming challenges for gaming and plenty of reasons for optimism. What do you currently see as the biggest threat to the industry, and what do you view as the industry's biggest opportunity?
Well, I think, as I said in my opening remarks, I think that the illegal gambling market continues to be the biggest threat to the industry. I don't think there's any other industry in America that would tolerate a $500 billion illegal marketplace competing with the legal industry. The illegal operators, they prey on vulnerable consumers, no consumer protections. They don't, there's no economic benefit to states or tribal nations. So honestly, it is one of the areas that we're really pressing our friends at the Department of Justice and law enforcement to take action on. I think that we will continue to work hard on this. Now, as it relates to biggest opportunity, certainly we start the year with tremendous amount of optimism. And I think that, I don't know how long we're going to continue to see, record growth in the industry, but we continue to open up new verticals, whether it be in the iGaming or sports betting space. We're seeing, as I mentioned, new states that have come online just this past year in the brick and mortar space. And so the opportunities for 2023 to outpace 2022 are really strong. And again, we start off with tremendous amount of momentum.
There's a bunch of questions coming in. I don't know that we're going to be able to get to all of them, but Dave, here's a question about how we got to the illegal gambling numbers and the projections. So can you share with folks how we got that number?
Yeah, so really it was, there's kind of 3 verticals, and 2 of them were the same methodology, right? With sports betting and iGaming, we have a known size of the legal markets. So what we did was conduct a survey, several thousand American bettors, to ask how they bet online and how they bet on sports. And we gave them a list of providers, not identifying them as legal or unregulated providers, and asked for a share of their budget and their spending that went to each, and kind of computed the the illegal market based on that, kind of taking into account the amount people overestimate how they spend, right? We knew how much they were overestimating their spend on legal operators for those verticals, and so we adjusted their estimated spending with illegal operators down. And then for the gray market machine market, there are a few states like Virginia and Georgia where we have a pretty good idea of how many machines there are out there and kind of what the coin in and the hold on those machines is. And so again, doing a survey of people's kind of awareness and how many times they had seen or played those machines in other states. We kind of took and extrapolated that out based on the kind of per capita incidence of the machines in the states where we had a better idea of where they were. It's kind of a quick and dirty answer. There's a lot more detail in the report we put out, but that's the big picture.
We've got time for about two more. I'm going to try to consolidate a few of these into one. So we've seen, Bill, you touched a little bit on the kind of growth that we've seen over the last couple of years, and how we plan to or how we can continue at this pace. And there's some question about whether stimulus contributed to the growth that we saw in 22. So maybe talk a little bit more about how we sustain this momentum going into this year.
Well, thanks. I think that it's a great question. I think that one of the things that the research that we've shown is that, at the highest level of people ever have said that, 40% have said that they plan to visit a casino over the next 12 months. That is more than at any time prior to the pandemic. And so this tremendous opportunity of recovery from international business meetings and travel are all things that we look to see, opportunities for continued growth.
Like I said, we're running out of time. You might be able to hear the bells over my shoulder here in DC, but I'm going to ask one more, Bill. There's and anybody whose questions we don't get to, we'll reach back out to you and try to answer as best we can after this call. But Bill says, since sports betting is delegated to states to determine what's right for them and legalize and regulate as they see appropriate for their constituencies, how can we help as an industry help them understand the benefits of the industry so that there's more uniform laws and regulations perhaps among states?
Well, I think it's important that each of the states make determinations on what they feel is the appropriate level of gaming. And we've seen that throughout the history of the industry, right? We have 992 casinos across the country. And in some states, we don't have any. And I think that it's really up to the stakeholders, legislators, and constituents to determine what that looks like. But the one thing we do know is we know that the illegal market exists in every single one of the states in America. And so if states begin that process of looking to legalize and give their constituents the opportunity to bet in a legal, safe, consumer-friendly marketplace, we want to make sure that they recognize that the illegal market exists, that we want to make sure that the tax rates are appropriate, and that lawmakers, as they're working through those issues, are doing so, with the interest of creating an opportunity for their constituents and moving people, quite frankly, away from the predatory illegal market.
Well, thank you, everybody, again for joining us. Thanks, Bill and Dave, for answering those questions. The statistics that Dave shared this morning are available. Were released this morning in our full year commercial gaming revenue tracker, are available at americangaming.org. And as a reminder for any members of the press who joined us this afternoon, they're invited to join us for a Zoom for our State of the Industry press conversation. If you need information on how to log into that, please reach out to us at press@americangaming.org for registration. Thanks again for being with us.